do a little meditation to begin with. Try to sit comfortably. If you meditate like this on, say, watching the breathing every day for some period of time, you can actually develop enough familiarity that even in 21 respirations, you can leave behind all the discursive thoughts. That's the main inner distraction, right? The thoughts. Outer distractions are when you get attached to the senses, objects of the senses. If your eyes are partially closed, that helps from the visual, but you might still be attracted to sounds, or if it's hot or cold, or aches and pains in your body. So withdrawing your attention inward to watch the breathing withdraws away from the sense bases, those distractions, and watching the breathing with tight awareness, let go of the other distractions. Try to calm your mind. Remind yourself occasionally what you're watching, the breathing. Identify the inhalation, the exhalation. Keep your mind on it even when it's changing direction. And thinking of our poor mothers, sentient beings, all of whom have been our mother numberless times in the past, how they're afflicted by suffering, even sometimes oblivious of it, thinking of the changeable suffering. Samsaric happiness is real happiness. Lives passing, again falling to the lower realms. Those who have nourished us taken care of us in numberless lifetimes in the past, again and again. Think for their welfare, I'm going to meditate on emptiness, as is taught in the Heart Sutra. It's said that the merit of meditating on emptiness is multiplied enormously with that kind of motivation, with a bodhicitta motivation, thinking, I'm going to meditate on emptiness in order to achieve high realization of enlightenment eventually, so that I can benefit all sentient beings. I can be less harmful to begin with, eliminate the obstacles to my lifespan, to my happiness, so that I can benefit others even now and continue to practice Dharma. So begin by simply quieting the mind one step further, watching the clear light nature of your mind. Like a tortoise withdrawing its legs and head within the shell, bring your attention away from the 5 outer senses. Withdraw it toward the heart chakra. Whatever appearances occur to the consciousness, recognize that behind them, the nature of the mind is clear light. And focus on that rather than the variety of appearances. Within the quiet, try to recognize the object of negation, of personal selflessness, a sense of your self-identity, the I, not just as in ordinary daily life may be on a gross level grasped to, such as identifying yourself with your body or your feelings or your intellect, if you felt particularly smart or dumb that day. But something more subtle and abiding continuously, the innate sense of the I, as though findable from its own side, not merely an imputation, but inherently existing, truly existing. To aid in the identification, you may have to try to instigate that, again by recalling something embarrassing or humiliating, or something that you're very attached to, want very much. the appearance of the I as inherently existent is not the main problem. The main problem is our belief in that, what's called ego grasping, grasping to that as true, believing it, assenting or adhering to that. That particular response to the appearance is an ignorant consciousness. So see if you can recognize not only the appearance of the I, but with one part of the mind, just as though in peripheral vision, one part of the mind watching how the mind reacts to that appearance of the self. Certainly, at first, not actively disbelieving it, even if you can't recognize its mode of apprehending the I. Not disbelieving it, at least, assenting to it, its existence, the way that it appears. This kind of subtle ignorance, innate ignorance, is a condition for all the other delusions, afflictions, to arise. To cause that ignorance to cease, one tries to develop something contradictory with it, as we'll see today. A wisdom consciousness that slowly grows, that sees the appearance of true existence as empty of that reality that we attribute to it now, that it appears as. That's the antidote to this ignorance. One can use the logic like this. This I that seems to be existing from its own side, seems to be naturally, inherently, or truly existing, is actually empty of that quality of such existence. Why? Because the I that does exist is a dependent arising. All phenomena are dependent arisings. They arise in dependence on a basis of designation, being cognized by a consciousness, which then correctly labels that or conceives that. Now, if we're able to concentrate sufficiently on that wisdom understanding developed through inferential cognition, through an inference, through a logical reasoning, rather, for that time, the ignorant consciousness is either diminished very, very much, or in the case of a direct realization of emptiness, might be non-manifest completely. as Avalokiteshvara said, the same holds for the form aggregate, our body, our feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, and consciousness. So think of your body, how it's appearing to your consciousness now as a unity, a singularity, one thing, the body. Recall, too, that the body is merely a dependent arising. The concept of body, the idea, the conventional phenomena, body, that does relatively exist, is merely a name, is a dependent arising, merely a name labeled to the parts, the atoms, the molecules, the various limbs of the body. The way that the body appears to our consciousness is somehow findable from its own side, not just being labeled by consciousness. That sense of body is totally void. I think the same holds for the feelings. So the pleasurable feelings that we grasp to, or that we find repulsive, unpleasant, and that we try to avoid. Part of our reaction to those feelings is due to the sense of the I. Part of it is due to the sense of reality, true existence of the feeling, sense of that, grasping to that. When we long for feelings. So see also, feeling is just a concept labeled to the parts, the basis of designation by my consciousness. That's the only kind of feeling that does exist. There are no truly existent feelings. The way that they appear and my mind grasps, because feelings, like all phenomena, are dependent arisings. Again, delve into the sensations, feelings. By feelings, we don't mean emotions. Here we mean the sensations of pleasure, displeasure, or neutrality that arises within our six consciousnesses. Although they have a conventional relative existence due to the ripening of karma, one of the main ways that karma ripens on our aggregates is the experience of feeling. although they might seem to be localized within, say, our body, limbs, or our mind, if we're feeling ebullient, they can't be found anywhere. Like the self can't be found in the body or mind or outside of the body and mind. Because the body, the mind, the consciousness, the feelings are dependent arisings. So think for the welfare of all living beings who are undergoing all the different kinds of suffering. I'm going to participate in the class tonight, and I'm going to begin by the formal recitation of the praise and the actual substance of the Mother, Holy Mother, Perfection of Wisdom, Heart of Wisdom Sutra. Samjume Sherab Parojin Make Mingak Namke Ngoni So Rangrik Yeshe Chuyul Chen Du Sun Galway Yum La Chakselo Tadyata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Thus did I hear, at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, and not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tadyata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharitvati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So if you meditate on the meaning, if you recite the Heart Sutra like that, meditate on the meaning of each of the verses. First, meditate, as we did in our meditation, on the emptiness of the self, and having recognized the subtle object of negation, the subtle self, and the ignorance adhering to that, counter that with a logic which can refute that. Before, remember the logic we used last time, Carrie? Remember what we used? The logic that's sometimes called a 4-point analysis. You don't have your queer shirt on this week. It probably would have reminded you. Remember the 4-point analysis? Recognizing the object of negation, then establishing the pervasion that if such a self existed, it would have to be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different than the aggregates. Do you remember something like this? Then the last two are just showing that neither of those could be. It's not inherently one. Self is not inherently one with the aggregates. There'd be many fallacies if it were. It's not inherently different. Therefore, the conclusion is that since if it existed, it would have to be that or that. As it's neither that or that, it doesn't exist. Such a truly existent thing does not exist. It's not truly existent. So then when one recognizes that, one can meditate on the emptiness of the self. All that appears to one's mind is a mere vacuity, the lack of that I that was previously not only appearing, but being grasped to. Now what the wisdom consciousness is actually apprehending its emptiness. So the object no longer appears, the self no longer appears. All that you're apprehending with the wisdom is sort of like in one of those, they call them aha moments. Do you use that? What else do we call that? What did we used to call that?
Light bulb moment.
Light bulb moment. Don, what did we call it when we were kids? Don and I are probably the oldest ones here, right? Aha moments, when Ah.
Eureka.
Eureka moments. Okay, Frank's back from the Greek times. Eureka moments. So at that moment when the consciousness actually has some kind of taste of that, you apprehend the emptiness of the self, dwell on that for some time. Later you can use other reasonings. Like today we were using, just sort of investigating the reasoning of dependent arising, the king of reasons, king of reasonings. Do you remember what that is? Venerable Rennie, you've heard of that before, the dependent arising being called a king of reasonings? Do you know why it's called that?
Because it refutes at the same time inherent existence and non-existence.
It refutes at the same time what?
Inherent existence and non-existence.
And non-existence. I guess you could say that, yeah. It's when one is using it, you're only using it to refute one thing. You're only using it to refute inherent existence, but the very expression of it, as you say, when you say like the self is a dependent arising, the very expression of it expresses the conventional existence of the phenomena. Phenomena do exist because they're dependent arisings. They're not totally non-existent, as Venerable Rennie said. So to actually use that reasoning, you might think, well, forget about the other reasonings. That's the king of reasonings. Maybe we should call it the queen of reasonings. No, they usually call it the king of reasonings. There's enough that, there's the mother. Come on, let's leave something for the guys. King of reasonings. For that to actually function, you have to realize that phenomena are dependent arisings. You say the self is not truly existent because it, and you can kind of, as a paraphrase, as a parenthetical statement, you could say, like all phenomena, it is a dependent arising. But just merely saying those words isn't going to cause you to realize emptiness until you've established that privation, that if something exists, in fact, if it doesn't exist also, if anything, any phenomenon or non-phenomena is a dependent arising. So that's not easy to do at first. So we'll talk about that over time, how you, Venerable Rennie, do you know how you establish that, first of all, that phenomena are dependent arisings?
Establish?
Yeah, because for that to work, like to say the self is not truly existent because it's a dependent arising. How do you establish that the self is a dependent arising?
Because it depends on these three things, on parts, cause, and condition, and imputation.
Well, when we say the three things from the Prasangika point of view, we don't mean those three levels. We mean even the subtlest one,
so
the basis, consciousness, and the label or the concept. But how do you, in order to establish that, almost you have to have realized emptiness before. So it's a little bit, at first it might seem like a little bit of circular reasoning. Maybe when we talk about, over time, as we talk about this in other subjects also, when we get to the wisdom chapter of the intermediate Lan Rim, that's one of the other subjects we're studying, right? When we get to the wisdom chapter there, Lama Tsongkhapa mentions about this kind of problem, how you first establish that phenomena are dependent arisings, because almost to know that phenomena are dependent arisings almost presupposes that you know they're empty of true existence. If you're trying to use that to prove they're not truly existent, almost sounds like you had to realize they're not truly existent first. So there's a little bit of some doubt about how you go about that. We can talk about that later. So anyone have, you get that? So anyone have any questions? Venerable.
Why can't you just meditate on the 4-point analysis and then you get it, that's emptiness? I mean, just
definitely, you can meditate on the 4-point analysis, but like one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Mahayana, from the Chandrakirti's point of view, trying to explain Nagarjuna, and then Lama Tsongkhapa, especially in the Gelugpa tradition, we say that even the hearers and solitary realizers have to realize emptiness, right? Even though in their scriptures it doesn't look like emptiness is explained in any overt way. What differentiates the presentation of emptiness in the Mahayana is a great number of reasonings, multiplicity of reasons. Of course, on the method side, what differentiates the Mahayana from the Hinayana is the method of bodhicitta compared to the method of renunciation, right? You agree, right? That's the main, that you would say, what's the difference between Mahayana and Hinayana? They both realize emptiness, but the Mahayana has the method of bodhicitta. But in addition, the Mahayana has a multiplicity and numberless reasonings to establish emptiness. The emptiness of coming and going, the emptiness of time, the emptiness of the self, the emptiness of the 5 aggregates, the 12 entrances, the 18 elements, so forth, so that whatever comes to mind, one is trained, the bodhisattva is trained and is able to overcome any kind of hindrances very easily. So, as Venerable said, she's a wee bit fatigued by having other new, why bring up some other reasonings? One is enough. It's enough to realize emptiness, but in the path, in the bodhisattva path, we might spend countless eons working, remaining in samsara for the benefit of sentient beings, within which we need that kind of support of the realization of emptiness to overcome laziness, overcome discouragement, to overcome attachment, to overcome anger. And so we need to be able to see objects and the self as both empty of true existence. Even the actions, like coming and going, or becoming, or realizing. Even realizing is not truly existent. Like in the Heart Sutra says, there is no wisdom, there is no attainment, there is no non-attainment. So that's in those various ways, we might have to apply different kinds of reasonings to establish emptiness. So to get familiar with them is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Yes, Michelle.
I don't think this is a very smart question, but I just need some clarification because.
Then I won't give a very smart answer.
No, I'm sure you're going to give a very smart answer. Basically, what I need is a flow chart. So what I don't understand, I do, I really do,
Yeah,
on emptiness. And what I don't understand.
We're going to give Diana and Don the flow chart.
Just the flow chart. That I really, because what I don't understand is if everything is inherently empty. Okay,
inherently empty. You mean
right,
empty of inherent existence?
Right, and because I understand. I mean, I did a reading of this. I understand empty is different than emptiness, so I don't want to confuse that. But what I don't understand, if that's true, then all action, virtuous and non-virtuous, would be empty of existence. So therefore, okay,
not empty of existence.
Okay.
There's a difference. Okay.
That's what I'm trying to
So,
tease
for instance,
out.
sometimes, especially in the Hinayana, one of the criticisms of the Mahayana, that when they go,
I can understand why they would do that.
yeah, right. You can understand.
After reading this, yeah.
If everything were empty, if it weren't just the self, which were empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent. Remember, they're thinking of a grosser in their tenets. They're talking about just that gross sense of self, and they call that. You could call that the self. The person is empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent. So you could use emptiness in that way, but they don't usually use the word emptiness there. But then the Mahayana says, but all phenomena are empty.
Right.
Also virtue and non-virtue and so forth. And then they slap their heads and they say, but then if they're empty, they don't exist.
And then how do we create bad karma?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Exist?
So just leave that. Yeah, they don't exist. If the Buddha were empty, the Buddha wouldn't exist. So the supposition is that emptiness refers to non-existence. And in fact, you'd phrased it that way, that it's empty of existence. It's not phenomena are not empty of being existent. Of course, some phenomena are empty. When I would say anything which is a phenomena exists, first of all, by definition.
Well,
wait. Just let me. anything which is a phenomena exists by definition, because phenomena means something which can be cognized.
Okay.
So there's also non-phenomena, like the horns of a rabbit, okay? Non-existent
Okay.
things, you could say. So anything that exists is not empty of existence.
Right.
It's empty of inherent existence. That's much different than being empty of existence.
Okay.
Michelle exists, but Michelle is empty of being truly existent.
But then when you talk about inherent existence in virtue, in actions, whether they're virtuous or non-virtuous, then how do they create karma
Okay,
if
well,
they inherently are empty?
Then no,
That's where
even putting the adjective, what would it be, adverb?
Okay, I may be
Inherently,
I'm-
even saying inherently empty, putting it in the wrong place.
Okay.
They're not inherently empty. That would mean that emptiness itself was something inherently existent.
Okay.
Emptiness itself is a dependent arising.
Right. I
They're
got
empty
that.
of inherent existence. It doesn't
Right.
mean they're inherently empty.
Inherent. Okay.
I mean, you can interpret it in some way. You can interpret it that way if you understand correctly. But in the same way, think again. Go back to the person again,
Okay.
because if you understand that well, you can apply it to other things,
Okay.
like the body and other things, and even action. So first of all, we take Michelle. Michelle does exist. To say that Michelle is empty of true existence doesn't mean Michelle does not exist. How does Michelle exist? As a dependent arising, as a concept or name, like in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, Buddha said, Kari is just a name. Bodhisattva is just a name. Kari doesn't mean like carry the bucket, that is the name of one of our students, right?
Right.
Okay. So Bodhisattva is just a name. It doesn't mean that Bodhisattva, I've said this before, it doesn't mean when you say Bodhisattva is just a name, it doesn't mean that Bodhisattva is the reverberation of the sound Bodhisattva, right? It means that Bodhisattva is no more. If you try to look for Bodhisattva within Frank, if you say Frank is a Bodhisattva, or if Frank were to have, or if George were to have the egoism to think, I am a Bodhisattva, like it says in the Vajrakatta Sutra. If someone were to think, I am a Bodhisattva, Subhuti, the Buddha saying, that person would not be a Bodhisattva. They'd be far cry from a Bodhisattva to think, I am a Bodhisattva. Because there is no truly existent. The implication in that sense is that there's a findable I and a findable Bodhisattva. Frank exists merely as a name. Bodhisattva exists merely as a concept or name. There is nothing inherently existent about Bodhisattva. So how do you apply that to other things? When we talked about the body, did you kind of understand that? First you have to apprehend how the sense of body, or how the body appears to the consciousness, as though not merely a name, a concept. You sort of weigh that in your mind. Body is just a name I attribute to this collection of parts. Like Lexus is just a name I call a car.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you got that, but I'm going it for others who aren't as sharp as you.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
going.
I'm not
Okay.
sharp.
No, I'm just.
No,
Okay.
not.
So first think of something. First, the self we understood.
Right.
Now also the body has a certain mode of appearance of being truly existent, findable somewhere in the basis of designation. But the basis of designation is not the body. That's not the body. The body is just a name, a concept, a phenomena. Body does exist as a phenomena, an impermanent phenomena that you can label to that collection of parts. And as the collection of parts change and, let's say, age, you can say the body has aged. But what causes us problems is that we feel there's a real body somewhere that we start to grasp onto. Now take, for instance, actions. Like, say, the action of, say, negative action of killing. Say you when you were a kid, you went fishing or something, you killed a fish, or you shot the birds off the branches or something. Did anyone do that? Did you go hunting when you were a kid? Where, in California or in Washington? Yeah. And maybe we did something like that. We put out mouse traps and we watched the mice get chomped up or something. And so there's a feeling, oh, I committed real murder. So one of the ways to help to purify that is to meditate on the emptiness of the action. That's one of the most powerful ways, in addition to the four opponent forces, to meditate on the emptiness of the action. Let's say, for instance, there was no inherently existent agent. Like, for instance, I think I caught that fish and chopped off its head. Let's say, I killed the fish. Three things. Agent, I, killed, action, fish, the object of the action.
Right.
Okay, in the case of killing. So you recognize each of these. Like when we dedicate the merits within the emptiness of the three spheres, there's a different spheres there. The merits, the goal dedicated to, the action of dedication, all are empty of true existence. It's somewhat similar, right? Bodhisattvas always try to unify all six perfections. They try to practice all six perfections with any one perfection. The charity of charity, the morality of charity, the patience of charity, the enthusiastic perseverance of charity, the concentration of charity, the wisdom of charity, even the wisdom of wisdom, and so forth. So, in the case of killing, the action, you would say, there is a sense, when you think of the action of killing, that there was a agent, and if you just talk about the action, meaning the action itself, and then the recipient. So you meditate, first of all, the I, that I thought, I killed that. There was never an I, truly existent I, the way that my mind is believing, and which causes, and actually the belief in that prevents us from really purifying that karma. There was never, ever an I, truly existent I, who killed that fish. It was, if the only I that did exist was a conventionally existent I, but there was no truly existent I. So you can start to relax a little. You already relaxing, Lisa?
No, I'm just thinking about some of my kids would use it. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
I
didn't throw that spitball,
just thought,
Lisa.
I can't give them this one.
Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah, this you have to reserve for high school and college. Then the fish that you thought of, oh, that poor fish, or that cat that I beat, or whatever you did, There was never, ever, even for, it's not like there was a cat, and then if you thought about it, you could think of it as not truly existent. There was never a truly existent cat, ever, from the beginning. Now, the action of killing, so there's when you were talking about the action.
Right.
Where does the action, where can you find the action? When we think of, I killed, we're thinking like, first of all, there's the preparation. Maybe there's a previous preparation. You're grabbing for the knife or the chopper. And then there's the actual action when you're raising the hand, or if you're very strong, you're raising the wrist or whatever. And then the beginning of the completion, bringing the blade down, chopping off the head, let's say. And then the completion of the act is the severing of the life force of the other being. And in terms of murder, it also has to do with the recognition that the other, other being has died. Where do you find the action? Where's the action of killing? There's many parts there, aren't there? You can't say, was killing only here? Or was killing here? Someone might say, oh, no, it's only when the head was cut off. But even then, there's only one split second when that took place. Killing, the action of killing, is a concept designated, imputed, named to that collection of parts in the same way that Michelle, a little more easily understood, is a name attributed to the collection of your aggregates. So actions also are merely concepts, are dependent arisings. They arise, killing arises, independence on that collection of parts. Without without the preparation, it wouldn't be a complete action of killing. There would still be negative karma created if there wasn't, say, motivation beforehand. You accidentally were thinking about something else and you chopped the knife down and you realized you'd cut off the head of the fish. Without the motivation, it wouldn't be the whole, complete path of action, but still create some negative karma.
And how is that karma attached to the mind stream? I mean, see, that's kind of where I get...
Well, that's another question. That's another question. How is it attached to the mind stream?
Yeah.
It's not necessary. It's not. You know, we have the in the study of the various philosophical schools. We did a little bit in our tenets class. All of the lower schools have to find some receptacle. They have to posit some receptacle for the karmic seeds. So they would say it might be the consciousness. The seeds are deposited upon the consciousness, or the Chittamatra. Where do they say the seeds are deposited? Do you know? The mind, the alaya vijnana, mind basis of all, or subtle consciousness. Prasangika, in Chandrakirti's text and other texts, very subtle point, it says that there is no necessity to posit a separate basis for the insemination, you know, the basis of this insemination of the karmic seeds, that they are, that the seeds perpetuate on the basis of the mere I. What's the mere I? Is the mere I the consciousness? No, mere I is just a name, concept. The mere Michelle. When we say mere Michelle, that we're talking about the conventionally existent Michelle. The mere I is just the concept I. There is no need to designate any other basis for the depositing of the seeds. So that's very difficult to chew.
Well, I mean, if everything has this emptiness, why wouldn't the seed? I mean,
when everything has this emptiness, you have to. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about that in terms of what it means, emptiness. And when it says form is empty,
right,
emptiness is form. Even, you know, just, it's not as though emptiness is something. Let's say this wristwatch. Emptiness is one thing, and the wristwatch is something completely different. Like you could separate them.
right.
This is rather difficult to understand, I think, because when we think of the wristwatch, we're automatically thinking of an inherently existent wristwatch. The only wristwatch that exists is the conventionally existent wristwatch, which is imputed from your mind.
Right.
Okay? You designate that conceptually. You think wristwatch, book, table, or what do you call this? Brocade. You give a label, and that the phenomena brocade exists for you, independence on those parts,
Right.
the consciousness perceiving them, the name, the concept given to them. So the emptiness of this brocade depends upon the brocade. They're inseparable. They're not the same, and they're not inherently the same. They're not inherently different. They're said, as we'll see today. What's the term, Venerable? Do you know?
Sorry.
Do you know what they say in the Tibetan classes when they say same entity?
Different isolate?
How do you say it in Tibetan? Do you know?
Do
you know how they say?
I don't remember.
Ngo chik dokpa tate. Dokpa tate. Ngo chik means same entity. Emptiness and the conventional phenomena are the same entity, of the same nature, like two sides of a coin, but they're different isolates. They're different conceptual perceptions. They can't be separated. Like what do the Italians say? The two faces of the. It's just like two faces of the medallion. Who's Italian? Are you Italian? How do they say? Do your mother ever say "due facce della medaglia" or something like that? I don't know how you pronounce it in Italian. If you cut, of course, you could try to cut the medallion in half, the coin, and you say, "Oh, here's the head and here's the tail." Ha! But then it's no longer a coin, right?
Right.
You can't, and to keep the phenomena together. So even then, if you talk about where the karmic seeds are deposited, I asked Venerable Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche, great teacher, some years ago, because in Tantra we still talk about the subtle, even though the I is merely imputed, there still is a subtle I imputed to the subtle mind and subtle wind. And Rinpoche said, still you can say, there's no error in saying, although you don't need to find a basis, you can say that the karmic seeds are deposited on the subtle wind, subtle mind, subtle wind. But how they're deposited, how they're connected, difficult to say. Okay. So anyway, these are seminal questions that your and my understanding of them hopefully will become more sophisticated over time. The questions you're asking are completely legitimate, and they are even asked in the texts.
Right.
Like when it says, "But what about this? What about this?" But right now, to be able to answer them, we're only getting sort of a gross understanding because we don't really even know what these terms mean yet. As we start to understand better what the self is, what the basis of designation is, what emptiness means, then we can start to understand that a little bit better. Presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So, anyone else from from the presentation of the Heart Sutra? Venerable? Yeah?
Maybe later.
Okay, I thought that clearing of the throat was a... Oh, there's another one. You have one?
Actually, I would like to ask
Okay.
about what you just said about Chandakirti saying that the karma is just, I don't know if the right word is attached to the imputed I.
Yeah, you don't have to have, like all the lower tenets below the Prasangika always have to, that's one of the problems. What's the place in which the karmic seeds are deposited? So we say neutral consciousness, or usually it's something to do with the consciousness, or like in the Chittamatra, the Alaya Vijnana, or in the generals, Vatantrika, Majjhamaka, the neutral mental consciousness. But one of the difficult points of the Prasangika, Lama Tsongkhapa pointed out, was in accordance with Chandrakirti and other lamas like that, that you do not have to posit, you don't have to look and be worried that has to be some place to put them, because when an action is done, when an action ceases, that's usually when we think the karmic seed has been deposited, okay? When the action ceases. The ceasing of an action itself is a, what do we call it? I don't know. Functioning thing. It sort of blows the mind of lower tenets. It's one of the uncommon tenet of the Prasangika, that in Tibetan we say shikpa. I don't know what the Sanskrit word is. Shikpa means the disintegration rather than ceasing. There's a different word for ceasing and cessation, like gokpa and gaku. But here, shikpa means to disintegrate. The disintegration of something, the ending of an action, is itself a functioning thing. It will have a functioning, all functioning things are synonymous with causes, we learned in our tenets classes and in other classes. So even the disintegration of an action is necessarily going to have an effect. Whether you can point out, whether you necessarily have to point out the basis upon which that action somehow is deposited. Maybe you can think of like the general, let's say collective karma of sentient beings. This world comes about because of the collective karma of sentient beings. Not all sentient beings are conscious when, I mean, how can you say, when the world is evolving, there is some kind of collective karma which is causing this appearance to occur, the evolution of the universe. So it doesn't have to be necessarily, I mean, if you talk about collective karma, is it deposited on every person's mind?
Yeah.
Collective karma?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Is deposited on every person's mind, so is it all ripening at the same time?
No.
Well, how does it evolve? How does the universe evolve then if it's not all ripening at the same time? So you might have to say that it's, I don't know, something to think about. Just to give an example, to take the mind away from just one, that my karma ripens something on my consciousness. It doesn't have to be necessarily on your consciousness. It can just be a dependent arising in association with your consciousness. That when your consciousness encounters certain conditions, that dependent arising can fructify.
If I understood you right, Chandrakirti said it sort of exists merely dependent on the imputed I.
There's a couple different things. Why you don't have to find a basis to deposit the seeds is because this other sort of difficult point of the Prasangika is because disintegration is a functioning thing. So later, when we study, have you heard that before, Mo? So that's one of the, I can't remember how many, the 8 difficult points, or there's different numbers. Lama Tsongkhapa in the Gompa Rapsal, when he talked about the uncommon points of the Prasangika that are exceptional, that you don't find in the other tenets, any of the other tenets. One of them is that disintegration is a functioning thing. Also that the hearers and solitary realizers necessarily realize emptiness, and so forth. There are 8 different kinds or more, depends on how you count them. I think there's a text, is it Daniel Kosord or one of those people who wrote his PhD thesis on these 8 uncommon qualities of the Prasangika. I think it's a book in the Snow Lion. And it's a very famous subject. So, although there's no hot water here, let's take a little break. So, okay, now we've gotten to the point, we've talked about the common preamble, prologue, the exclusive, the uncommon prologue, and then the question, that's asked by Shariputra, and the beginning of the reply by Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara, as we mentioned last time, said, Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this: correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So does that start to make some sense to you now? Carrie, does that make some sense? What are you saying? Mm-hmm. You have to understand it correctly as being empty of inherent existence, and you have to do it again and again. In the Tibetan, it just says Jesu, just as though, belatedly again doing it. Now, this statement, one of the most famous, can I say most famous statements? Can be, some people. There might be some other statements in other places. When maybe some people might say, oh, the most famous statement is Buddha said, the three realms are mind only, or something from the Lankavatara or something. But here, from the Heart Sutra, form is empty. Emptiness is form. This is Avalokiteshvara's part, the next statement he's making after telling the general how to meditate on the 5 aggregates. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. So first of all, he's talking about form. Form here meaning the form aggregate. When we talk about form aggregate, does that mean visual form? No? You just trying?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think everything.
Everything? So
Form.
consciousness is form?
That's what it says, yes.
Consciousness is form? No.
Takes a form.
No, that's not what. Here, when we talk about the 5 aggregates, all material things are called form aggregate. So it can be, from a certain extent, even visual form is called form. The word rupa in Sanskrit and zuk in Tibetan can mean both. Form in the sense of something material, like the form aggregate, and it can mean the particularity of that called visual form. Is it better to say visual form or visible form? What do you think? Visual.
Visible.
What?
I would think visible.
Visible form? What about visual form?
Well, I
Visual
can think
form,
of-
the sense, the reason I say this is because we say form which is an object of eye consciousness.
Well, I think you might be able to have a vision or a hallucination, and it would appear real to the beholder, but I don't know if there's really
Visual
a form,
form.
to be seen.
That's still, yeah, what is that, Venerable? When you have a vision and there's no
I don't see
physical.
the difference between visual and visible.
Okay, so it's some, but Carrie's saying, but say, for instance, if you have, is in a dream, is that visible form or visual form?
No, I just.
You know, the big dog that's chasing you down the street, or the beautiful guy or girl.
That's mine. That's a remembrance.
So is that form?
It's not
So if you check, that is actually, there is a kind of form according to the highest tenet. The lowest tenets and the highest tenets often agree. Vaibhashika and the Prasangika, they do say that even dream form is a kind of form.
But
To
wouldn't
the
that
mental
be?
consciousness.
Yeah, there's a special kind of form. Also, there's some kind of forms that are not perceived by the eye consciousness, called non-revelatory form. One way we could translate it, meaning, like, for instance, if you take vows, do you remember that? Like, if you take vows,
Oh yeah, this is kind of.
according to the Vaibhashika and the Prasangika also accepts, if you take vow, another person can see that you've made a determination. There's some aura, something visible that they can see with,
Visible.
well, not with the eye conscious, with their clairvoyance. Something, but it is called a visual. It is called a. It is within that aggregate, amongst objects of consciousness. I say it is. It is. It is part of the form aggregate. Okay.
It's visual form, not visible.
Well, it's kind of form which is maybe a mind entrance. Okay. Anyway, this is something we can talk about as time goes on more. So this particular thing is called, at least Donald Lopez calls it the fourfold profundity. Kind of sounds nice, doesn't it? You like that? The fourfold profundity. And then what's the next one called? What's the next one called?
Eightfold.
The eightfold profundity. Did you ever hear that before? I've never heard the Lama say. I'm not sure if he actually has some. He must have some scriptural reference to that. I haven't seen the word in Tibetan. I don't know what he's translating. Fourfold. Yes. The fourfold profundity. Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Powell.
Absurdity.
Yeah, the fourfold absurdity in some cases. You have to be careful. Some people are watching this who may be Republicans. Okay. Sorry, excuse me. So form is empty. So, like I said before, some versions that are quoted by Don Lopez from the Sanskrit commentaries, seems that there was a Sanskrit version that said form is emptiness, emptiness is form, let's say the first two. There is definitely a Tibetan and I believe Sanskrit form that says, or form, version of the text that says form is empty, emptiness is form. You'd have to interpret them differently. Usually the one that we recite when we say, when we recite the Heart Sutra with the Dalai Lama and other times, and is preserved in the Kangyur, I believe, says form is empty, emptiness is form. Why is that? Because let's take the form of this. What is this? Caramel or? Yeah, no, I mean yeah, but I mean inside. I can't see inside. But I thought Venerable knew. What's your favorite? I don't like those. When they give those big boxes of chocolates with all the creams inside. Do you like this? I can't imagine. Do you like this? I like the ones that are crunchy inside, that have like the one my grandmother used to get at Christmas, the turtles. Do you ever heard this? Do you ever hear this one? What was it? Walnut or pecans?
Yeah.
Pecan and then caramel and then chocolate.
They were great.
Now that's good. Just full of this liquidy stuff. I don't see any special purpose. But anyway, forget it. That's just my attachment arisen from my sense of the consumer, truly existent George, the eater, and the sense of a truly existent chocolate turtle. What do they call them? Caramel? What do they call them? Just turtles. Yeah, just turtles. Okay. So let's say this form, this physical, material thing. When we say form is empty, from a Gelugpa point of view, that's the correct way to say, because in terms of what Michelle was asking before, there would be an error in first saying form is emptiness. Why? Because form is a conventional truth. There is a conventionally existent form. Emptiness is an ultimate truth. The form here, this particular chocolate thing, itself is empty of true existence. It has emptiness, but there would be a verbal fault in saying form is emptiness, because you would be saying conventional truth, a conventional truth is an ultimate truth. In general, phenomena, this is one thing we said in the break, phenomena are either conventional truths or ultimate truths. They are, what's the word? What do you say logically? One thing cannot be both. If it's one, it's not the other. Exclusive. They're mutually exclusive. If something is a conventional truth, it's not an ultimate truth. If something is an ultimate truth, it's not a conventional truth. So if you were to say form is emptiness, as this comes later, there are some statements like that, you'd have to be interpreting it differently. The way that the Indian scholars who interpreted it this way and the Gelugpas usually interpret it, form is empty means form itself does not truly exist. Form is empty of true existence. That's the meaning of that first phrase. Form is empty. It doesn't mean that if you look inside, between the atoms there's space, and if you look in the atoms there's space between the neutrinos or the, what do you call it, what is it called? The quarks. Did you ever read Ulysses? You read Ulysses? That's supposedly where Murray Gell-Mann got the name quark. You know what quarks are, right? Supposedly the building blocks of leptons and other things. There's some part in Ulysses supposedly in some pub, and someone is saying 3 quarks for Master Mark or something like that, and then because quarks form some triad like that. Anyway, there's another story. So form is empty. The first part of this fourfold profundity, if you want to call it that, is referring to the fact that form, among the 5 aggregates, does not truly exist. If you look for form, it looks like, so yeah, it's right there. And it's not as though, there's no sense that form only exists as an imputation. It really looks at form is out there waiting for you, right? From its own side. And if you sought it, not only could you find form on the table, but if you got down and then you bit into it, you'd find the form there somewhere, right? But from Buddhist perspective and from the experience of meditators, form is empty of that kind of findable existence that we call natural existence, true existence, existence from its own side. All of those are kind of hypothetical synonyms. Why are they called hypothetical synonyms? Do you know? Excuse me. For two things to be synonyms, they have to exist. Does true existence exist?
No, not from its own side.
Not from its own side, but does it conventionally exist? Is there something which is truly existent? Does true existence exist? No. All phenomena are not truly existent. Anything which is a phenomenon is not truly existent. So true existence itself does not exist. It's not a real phenomena. It's not like there's some true existence that exists, but this is empty of it. You know, like there is a true existence, but this is empty of that. It's not like that. Like this is the turtle, and it's empty of that kind of gooey stuff that Carrie likes. It's not like that.
Emptiness is not a phenomenon,
Emptiness does exist.
but you said phenomena don't exist. So emptiness itself cannot be a phenomenon?
No, emptiness is a phenomenon. Emptiness does exist. Does exist. But true existence does not exist. What does emptiness mean? Let's say the emptiness of this form means that this form is empty of being truly existent. When you recognize, when you have that understanding of wisdom that perceives that this is empty of what does appear, because the reason we're even bringing it up, you say, well, why even bring up true existence? Who cares? Well, that's how things appear to us. They do appear to be findable. When you say car, when you say land of medicine Buddha, you have some idea, like there is a land of medicine Buddha here. You've come to SoCal and you say, oh, here's land of medicine Buddha. Where? Land of medicine Buddha is just a name you impute. Sometimes you can use a part to refer to the whole. Like say, if you just burn a part of your robe, your clothes, you can say, oh, my shirt, my what do you call this? Shawl is burned, even though the whole shawl is not burned, just because part of it's burned. So you could say, oh, I visited, yeah, I was at Land of Medicine Buddha, because you were on part of Land of Medicine. It doesn't mean you have to be on every single basis of imputation of Land of Medicine Buddha. But once you realize emptiness, you realize that the basis of designation of the conventional phenomena, let's say form, is empty of what is appearing to your consciousness due to beginningless imprints in your mind as being truly existent, findable. It is empty of that true existence, which does not exist. Does the appearance of true existence exist, Frank?
I think so. The appearance.
He's being very careful.
The appearance of true existence.
Does true existence exist? Does true existence exist?
It exists conventionally.
No. True existence does not exist.
Nothing exists.
There's
inherent. Nothing.
Yeah, but no, just talking about true existence. Yeah, I'm just saying, does true existence exist? Is it an existence?
Well, the
No.
concept of true existence exists.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the concept of true existence. Does true existence exist?
No.
Does the appearance of true existence exist?
Conventional.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about convention. Just does the appearance of true existence exist? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, phenomena do appear to be truly existent. Are there consciousnesses which conceive of true existence, believe that appearance of true existence, look at, see it, and say, yeah. Are there consciousnesses like that?
Yes.
Yeah. The consciousnesses that grasp to true existence, ignorant consciousness, does exist. There is an appearance of true existence that does exist, but does true existence, sort of the what would we say, the conceived object, does that exist? No. It's like Uncle Charlie coming down the stairs at Christmas dressed up as Santa Claus. You could say Santa Claus appears, you know. There are kids who are sitting down there believing Santa Claus. There are ignorant consciousnesses who are believing that appearance, but everyone else, all the relatives smoking their cigarettes or drinking their coffee around, you know, oh, Charlie, there's Charlie again. They recognize that the conceived object, Santa Claus, is empty. There is no Santa Claus existing in that appearance. Right? It is empty of a real Santa Claus. So it's good to know when we're talking about emptiness, We're talking about phenomena. What does exist, what doesn't exist. So, true existence, does it exist? Venerable, true existence? No. Is there appearance of true existence? Is there an ignorance that grasps to true existence? Yeah, all of those things exist, but a true existence doesn't exist. So when we say the hypothetical synonyms of true existence, natural existence, existence from its own side, existence as though findable from its basis of designation, all of these are called hypothetical synonyms because for two things to be synonyms, they have to exist. Dog and what? Perro. Is that how you say it in Spanish? Or perro, how do you say? Perro. Perro. So, perro and dog are synonymous, right? Are they synonyms?
Well, they're different languages.
Yeah, so maybe you wouldn't call them synonyms, but there's something like synonyms, right? Impermanent and product, are they synonyms? Diana? Functioning thing and impermanent phenomena, are they synonyms?
I mean, they refer to the same thing. I don't know if you.
Yeah, they're synonyms. They're both referring to the same thing. They both have to exist, but true existence, inherent existence, all these other hypothetical synonyms, they're called hypothetical synonyms because the thing they're referring to doesn't really exist. So they're not real synonyms. That's the point of saying that. That's why I belabored this point. Sorry. Excuse me. Okay. Form is empty. So the first profundity is saying that although, the implication, although phenomena appear, like such as form, appears to be findable, appears to be really existing there from its own side, it is empty of that. Form is empty. We wouldn't say that form is emptiness. What would be wrong with that? Emptiness, does emptiness exist? Yes. Emptiness does exist, doesn't it? It is an existence, it's not like true existence. So what would be wrong with saying form is emptiness? It's not because one of them is non-existent. It's that there are two levels of truth. Form is a conventional truth, emptiness is an ultimate truth, and there is nothing which it's one basis which is both a conventional truth and an ultimate truth.
You wouldn't be able to say that the Buddha, since he sees both simultaneously, from a Buddha's point of view, you could say form is emptiness, and
So
emptiness is form.
later when we talk about Shariputra, the last paragraph on, at least in this printing, Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, no, where's it earlier? Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. That comes at that point. It says, Chutamche tongpa ni te. All phenomena are emptiness. Or you could try to, maybe you could say it, you could translate it, all phenomena are just empty. You could press it, but it looks like it's saying literally, all phenomena are emptiness. So when that kind of phrase comes, it's almost like talking about tantric or Buddha experience, that perceiving both levels of truth at the same time. But there's still one basis is not both levels of truth.
Because when you speak with Zen people, their interpretation would be more like that from a Buddha's point of view.
Sometimes in some of the other Tibetan traditions also, they talk about things more like that. But when somehow even the other traditions that sometimes are critical of the Gelugpa, about the, the Gelugpa is too complicated. In the end, they say, actually, it's right, but it just seems like to teach people or something that's too complicated for people to say that. Because when you talk about phenomena are empty, if you from the beginning you're teaching them they do conventionally exist, almost it's hard for beginners to understand. It's just like maybe Lisa's students, they might say, although it's empty, it still exists conventionally, so I want it. Something like that. It's hard maybe to differentiate between to understand what just conventional existence is. So, form is empty.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said phenomena are either conventional or ultimate truths?
Yes.
And I understand it. However, form is empty, emptiness is form. Doesn't that mean two sides of the same coin? Meaning that conventional and ultimate?
So the two sides of the coin, the head, let's say, it's just in common terminology. Let's say Carrie and I are gambling. We're flipping the coin. And it comes up heads. And I had chosen tails. And I say, well, it doesn't matter, heads or tails. He said, no, heads and tails are different. They're they're part of the same thing, but they're different, baby. I win, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. So, conventional truths and ultimate truth. Any phenomena has a conventional reality. Let's say these eyeglasses have a conventional reality, conventional truth. The eyeglasses which are merely imputed to this collection of parts. There is the appearance of truly existent eyeglasses simultaneously intermixed with that appearance of conventionally existent, merely imputed eyeglasses. We can't really now apprehend how the conventionally existent eyeglasses appear to us because it's dominated by the appearance of true existence. Right. Later, when we realize emptiness, we can start to see how phenomena are mere imputations. Maybe we can perceive them somehow, kind of mirage-like or illusion-like. So those eyeglasses, the very conventionally existent, not extremely, but the eyeglasses themselves, the conventional eyeglasses themselves, which we're not really understanding, that are appearing to us as truly existent, they are empty, those conventionally existent glasses are empty of the appearance which is with them. That is to say, they're empty in the sense that they are not, that appearance that is there is like a shadow, like the boogeyman projected upon the shadows. The shadow is empty of the boogeyman. Right. Although our mind conceives of it, it might even to a certain extent say, well, it does look like the boogeyman. The boogeyman is appearing. Right. But it's actually empty of the boogeyman that our mind is conceiving to be there. There is no boogeyman, is there? In that shadow. Okay, so the eyeglasses are empty of the truly existent eyeglasses. That's called the eyeglasses emptiness. So the eyeglasses, like one side of the medallion, the conventionally existent eyeglasses, are not separable from its ultimate nature, the emptiness of the eyeglasses. But the emptiness of the eyeglasses, for an ordinary person, as Renee is pointing out, to the Buddha can perceive both levels of truth with one consciousness, all phenomena simultaneously with one consciousness. But for anyone other than a Buddha, it's not possible to have a direct realization with one consciousness of both conventional reality and ultimate reality.
We can only conceptualize it.
We could kind of think about it, yeah. We can conceptualize it. And we can alternate between bodhisattvas, arhats, and so forth, can alternate between, perceiving the conventional reality, meditating on its emptiness, and entering into meditative absorption where they have a direct realization of the emptiness of that, arising from that meditative absorption, and again perceiving the conventional reality, either with the senses or just, say, the mental image of the glasses as truly existent, or the mental image of the self as truly existent, entering into emptiness. So realizing ultimate truth directly, rising from that, recognizing the conventional truth, and having a memory of that, but that's not a direct realization of the emptiness at that time. So the two truths are not identical. They are said to be of one nature. In Tibetan we say ngo chik. It's kind of the terminology that arose with the Gelugpas after Lama Tsongkhapa. There were other ways of trying to refer to this earlier, as you can see in some of the commentary in Don Lopez's book. But the present Gelugpas kind of find this to be very precise and logical, correct. They are one entity. Ngo means entity. Chik means one. ngo chik, dokpa tate. Tate means different. So although they're one entity, emptiness and the conventional phenomena, their conceptual, the conceptual understanding of them, like the two sides of a coin, are different. The dokpa, you could translate it as reverse or opposite. Literally, the dokpa here means, it's hard to say how you can translate it. Sometimes some people translate it as isolate. The isolate of something, the dokpa, okay? So, okay, let me continue. So, form is empty. As we usually will see in many of the texts, it'll say it that way. Form is empty. That means form is not truly existent. It's empty of true existence. Yet, emptiness, when it says emptiness is form, it's interpreted here to mean that the emptiness, which is the ultimate nature of the form, this is the form, the emptiness, which is the ultimate nature of that form, is the same nature as the form. It's not different than the form. It's the same nature as the form. If it were something different than the form, remember what we were saying before? If the emptiness were something which were different from, something different than the form, then in perceiving that emptiness, which is supposed to be a sort of liberating experience such that you no longer would grasp to that thing as truly existent, if you realize the emptiness of that, if it were different than the form, then when you looked at the form again, it wouldn't necessarily affect your perception of the form because the emptiness was different than the form. So here we say form is empty, emptiness is form. That means it's of the same nature as the form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. So there's two kinds of things that arise. There are two errors. Emptiness is not identical to the form. Remember, because it's of the same nature as the form, but it's not identical to the form because then the convention, when an ordinary person perceived the form, the conventional reality with their eye consciousness, if emptiness were the form, as seems to be saying here, if emptiness were the form, what would they be perceiving? They'd be perceiving the ultimate truth with their eye consciousness. That would be a fallacy. There would be no need to meditate for years and learn all of these things in order to realize emptiness. Anyone who just saw form, they'd be seeing emptiness. If that really meant emptiness was form. What it means is that emptiness is of the nature of form. It's not something findably separate. So there's two kinds of fallacy here. One is if emptiness were exactly the same as form, then the two levels of truth would, what's the word? Conflute? No, what's the word? Conflate? Conflate? When two things... Conflict is another word, right? Okay. Conflation? When two things come together and become one? Maybe I'm not, maybe not right. Maybe conflict also. They would conflict. No, it wouldn't conflict. They'd be one. If form and emptiness were the same, there would be the fault that when you perceived conventional reality, you'd be realizing ultimate reality, and when you had a direct realization of emptiness, you'd also be perceiving impermanence and other characteristics of conventional phenomena. But when you perceive emptiness, no conventional phenomena appear to the mind. Only emptiness, only ultimate nature. So that would be one fallacy if emptiness and form were identical. What's wrong?
I'm just thinking, nobody really knows what it's like then.
Oh, definitely. The Arya beings know what it's like.
No, I know, besides them.
People on the path of preparation have a taste. They have, they're preparing or they're joining themselves. It's called, in Tibetan we say jorlam, kind of mean joining to the direct perception of emptiness, because they have a meditative equipoise, which is a union of shine, what do we say, shamatha, and vipassana, realizing emptiness correctly, realizing it by means of a mental image. They don't have a direct realization of it, but boy, they realize it. And all of their, even though that realization of emptiness, which is by a mental image, is not of sufficient intensity to cause cessation of the delusions, so they'll never return again, it is sufficiently strong to cause the delusion to become unmanifest. So someone on the path of preparation, and certain levels of the path of preparation, even before the path of seeing, when they reach the, Venerable, the patience level, right? Heek, peak, patience, highest mundane dharma, the 4 levels of the path of preparation. When they reach the patience level, heat, peak, patience, highest mundane dharma, when they reach the 3rd level, forbearance or patience level, they have a forbearance or patience to recognize that they will no longer be reborn. Well, they don't realize, but they will no longer be reborn in the lower realms. You might say, well, wait a second, they still have grasping to true existence, but it is not manifest enough because of their realization of emptiness, not by direct realization, but by a mental image, so that they'll no longer take rebirth in the lower realms, even before they achieve the path of seeing. And then usually on the path of seeing it says they will no longer be reborn in the lower realms, because the throwing karma to be born there, the grasping to that, the 12-link ignorance that can cause that to ripen, will no longer function to throw them into the lower realms, unless they choose. Bodhisattvas can pray and be born there, but that's not the same as uncontrolled rebirth in the lower realms. So form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not something other than form. It's not something, that if, like I said before, if emptiness were something other than form, then in perceiving that emptiness, it wouldn't have any effect on your perception of the form. Later, you could still have attachment to the form, even though you realize the emptiness of the form directly. And form is not other than emptiness. There's no form which can be separated from its emptiness. They are like the 2 sides of a coin. Okay? So that's, you can read in, hopefully if you read in the commentary here about this, I'm teasing Diana about doing the reading for, so if you find time to do the reading, then if you have some questions, then we'll go into more detail. So that's called the fourfold profundity. Okay, then before the eightfold profundity is coming the rest of this, of the 5 aggregates. Avalokiteshvara says, "Hey, listen, man. Hey, dude. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. In the same way." What does that mean, in the same way?
Same.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it is. Same, but what does it mean? Which same way? How would you do that? You would say, feeling is empty. Emptiness is feeling. Feeling is not other than, emptiness is not other than feeling. Feeling is also not other than emptiness. Discrimination is empty. Emptiness is discrimination. Discrimination is not other than, emptiness is not other than discrimination. Discrimination is also not other than emptiness. You do the same statements with each of those. So every phenomena that is impermanent, that can be found within the 5 aggregates, can be meditated on in that way. So it's useful if you think about that. Remember at the beginning when we did the meditation, we first talked about the emptiness of the form aggregate. Besides the emptiness of the self, we went to the body aggregate, the form aggregate. That's empty of true existence. So think about that. Form is empty, but this emptiness that I can sort of get a glimmer of is not some, it is itself the nature of that form aggregate. The emptiness is not other than the form aggregate, and the form aggregate is not other than the emptiness. Sorry?
That's quite, I found the second part quite tricky, you know. So, for example, you know, you have the form and then you don't find it. But that non-finding, you know, when you, there's only there's nothing there, right? So how that non-finding is related to the form.
Yeah.
Is
Then
very
you start.
tricky.
That's why this is very profound, because usually when we're just getting just a gross understanding of emptiness, it almost sounds like emptiness does exist somewhere. You know, whether not talking about anything. There's just emptiness. Oh, I'm going to go into the sphere of emptiness or something, like some place or something, irrespective of phenomena. But emptiness depends upon. Emptiness is itself a dependent arising, in that it depends upon the phenomena, which is the basis of negation. You know, what is the basis of negation? Yeah, let's say let's say we say the cup, the conventionally existent cup, the truly existent cup, and the emptiness of the cup. Can I posit those three things? Which of them exist? Conventionally existent cup, does that exist? Truly existent cup, does that exist? No. The emptiness of the cup, does that exist?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, what is the object of negation of the emptiness of the cup? That's the object that's being refuted. Right now, you said that it doesn't exist, but we don't realize that yet, right? That the cup is empty of true existence. It looks, a true existent cup appears, and our ignorance believes that, grasps to that. So the object of negation is the truly existent cup. What's we're using the word negation here. What's the basis of negation? Basis of negation is the conventionally existent cup. That's the basis upon which we're remember I said when the conventionally existent cup appears together with the appearance of a truly existent cup. So this is the base, the conventionally existent cup is the basis upon which we recognize the truly existent cup is negated. Okay?
But the emptiness of the cup and the emptiness of the cushion, in terms of appearance, is exactly the same. It's a bare emptiness and a bare non-finding, isn't it?
But it has been precipitated by that particular. If you're meditating not just on the emptiness of all phenomena, if you're meditating on the emptiness of one thing, say the emptiness of the cup, that emptiness that appears is precipitated by negating it on this. So it has, even when you arise from that meditation, the memory consciousness that you have, the feeling, although in that time, while you're meditating on the emptiness, only emptiness is appearing, there's no thought, there's no cup, man. There's no thought at that time. Only emptiness is appearing. But when you arise from that again, what kind of memory consciousness do you have? That the cup is empty of true existence, not that the cushion is empty of true existence. You can apply that logic then to other things. But the impact of that realization is dependent upon the basis of negation. Making some sense?
But isn't it broader than that? I mean, if you realize emptiness or have some hint of that, and you then come out of that meditative state, then isn't your perception that, I mean, more than just the cup is empty? It would, I mean, wouldn't you be able to perceive the cup and the cushion and
you can, if you apply it,
empty?
if you apply that, but you don't necessarily immediately apply it. For instance, it's said that the Hinayana Arhats, in order to achieve Arhatship, according to Chandrakirti, and especially the Gelugpa interpretation of this, they do realize the emptiness of the self. Not just this, that the self is empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent, but the self is empty of being truly existent.
Okay,
They realize real emptiness.
okay.
According to Prasangika, the basis is not different for personal selfless. The object of negation is not different for selflessness of persons or selflessness of phenomena.
Right.
According to the lower tenets, the object negated is different. For the person, you negate self-supporting substantially existence, say for Svatantrika, Majjhamaka. But for phenomena, you're refuting true existence. For Chittamatra, you're refuting self-supporting substantially existent person and the emptiness of phenomena, of consciousness and, let's say, form apprehending consciousness and form, the emptiness of those being different substances. In other words, that form, visual forms and so forth are the nature of consciousness. They're not different entities. So for the lower, anything lower than Prasangika, the object of negation of selflessness and of emptiness is different. But for the Prasangika, the object of negation is exactly the same. You're refuting true existence here and true existence here. So it is possible, even though in the Hinayana texts, according to the tenets that have come down for hundreds, thousand years, although modern people might interpret them differently, according to their texts, they don't usually talk about emptiness of phenomena, first of all, at all. They do say phenomena do truly exist, outer phenomena, but the self is empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent. So if you were to say that they did realize the self is empty of true existence, not just being empty of self-supporting, substantial existence, then when they arise from that, they don't necessarily immediately, they don't necessarily have mirage-like appearance or illusion-like appearance of all phenomena. They have to then apply that same logic to other phenomena. If they really did realize, this is what His Holiness said in Pasadena just recently, if you really did realize the subtle object of negation, of personal selflessness, then when you apply it to other phenomena, the deciding factor, the thing that will dawn on your mind is, you realize they are empty in the same way. But if you didn't realize the subtle object of negation here, when you apply it to other phenomena, you don't quite see how they could be empty.
Right.
They still appear to be truly existent. So the implication meaning that in general, in the Hinayana, when they're talking about the person being empty of self-supporting substantial existence, that's not the subtlemost object. So of course, when they arise from that meditation, they apply it to outer phenomena. There's no way to directly apply it to outer phenomena, but they think outer phenomena, one's aggregates, the mind, as I and mind, are truly existent. Sarvastivadins. So, okay? So you can meditate on, when you meditate on the Heart Sutra, sometimes you could spend, someone was telling me, who was it today? With meditating with Lama Zopa Rinpoche on Lama Chopa. They started at 5 o'clock in the morning and they finished at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What was that? Someone was in my room today talking about that. Was it? No. So you could meditate on the Heart Sutra that long also, Developing the preamble, what would you be meditating on there? It doesn't sound like there's anything to meditate on. No, there's a lot to meditate on there. Reverence for the Buddha was doing, his qualities, developing faith and so forth. When you talk about the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, meditating on the qualities of bodhicitta, both from the aim, when you call a Bodhisattva, aiming for Bodhi, and Mahasattva, the corresponding and coincident aspiration to free sentient beings from suffering. That's why we say both Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, all of those different things. Then when you meditate here, when Avalokiteshvara gives the answer, first meditate on the emptiness of the self. But then you recognize the Bodhisattvas don't meditate on the emptiness of the self only, they meditate on the emptiness of the 5 aggregates also. Form, how? Form is empty. So then you'd apply the reasoning, whether it be the 4-point analysis or the king of reasonings or other ones. Form is empty. And then to go beyond that, as Venerable Rene is saying, to get a really profound understanding of that emptiness is form, is the nature of form. Like, is not like something different. It is form. But because if it were, remember we said there are these two kinds of faults. If it were identical to the form, there'd be the fault that the two levels of truth were one and the same. If it were different than the form, then perceiving one, it wouldn't necessarily have any effect on the other, so forth. There are many different fallacies that you can see in that. You do that with each of the aggregates, especially on the feeling aggregate. You know, notice the feeling, because there's many parts. In feeling, there's different things. What do you think, Mo? Feeling, let's say pleasure or pain. There is the feeling itself. If you really imagine that that feeling is truly existent, then the attachment to the feeling can be more manifest. Of course, if you realize the emptiness of the self, if you really realize the emptiness of the self, that can eliminate that. But also you want to meditate on the object of observation of that, of the consciousness. So I think that you might find that very, very interesting, very useful. Also to think about yeah.
What part would you see in feeling? How would you go about meditating? Take a concrete example, for example.
So, first of all, you have to, just as in recognizing the emptiness of the self, you have to actually observe something, not just something theoretical or doctrinal. You have to have either a memory consciousness of a feeling, it can be usually easy because mental feeling, happiness or suffering, easily can be remembered, or you can conjure up. You might not be able to completely remember how happy you were before, but you can, if there's someone you're attached to or something you're attached to, by thinking of them, that attachment, that happiness can arise in the mind, right? That can be a cooperative cause. By thinking of a particular thing, someday I'll retire, I'll be able to be in my hermitage, and where are we going to live? Nice moderate latitudes, where there's not a lot of money needed for heating in the cold, and a nice sky. Wouldn't that be nice? Or His Holiness says sometimes, he quotes this verse from the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. How wonderful to be at the foot of a tree in the forest and to have no other companions other than the animals. No one to cause problems. How wonderful. There was an interview with this guy that was put on CNN, the photographer, and when he asked His Holiness, is there some kind of thing you like? What do you really think? And His Holiness said, I don't think you'd understand, but there's this. When I read this one verse, I kind of feel how wonderful, when I think of this. So imagine, generate something pleasure, or maybe it might be, if you have a pain, like you have a toothache, or you have some particular pain in the body, try to focus on that and observe that pain and see how it appears to your mind. Not only how it appears, but how your mind is reacting to it. Remember, there's always that twofold kind of interaction: how things appear and how the mind reacts to it. Like the difference between Santa Claus, Uncle Charlie appearing as Santa Claus, and whether you believe it or not. Whether the self appears and whether you believe it or not. Here, whether the feeling appears, how it appears to be really there, real, or truly existent. You can use the various hypothetical synonyms to give you a different flavor. Findable, like it's really there, it's findable, it's not merely imputed, it's existing from its own side. Try to see how it appears that way, and whether the mind is actually assenting to that. The different levels of grasping. Merely, like someone comes and says, I'm George Bush, and you go, yeah, okay, you're George Bush. Or you say, you're really George Bush. There are different levels of, assenting or grasping. So the same word zinba, dangzin, sometimes we say grasping to true existence. It can mean just perceiving true existence. The implication meaning assenting to it, because there are gradations of that, right? So someone who's realized emptiness still has dangzin, still has self-grasping, but not to the same level that I have self-grasping. Right? But it's still, for them, that might still be a little bit of something still there, assenting to it, but not grasping to it in the same way. So watch how that feeling appears. Are you doing it right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then apply, and then check. If it did exist in that way, findable, truly from its own side, it would have to be truly one with a basis, its basis of designation. So here you have to check, what's the basis of designation of the feeling?
That's the tricky part.
Huh? What would it be in this case?
Well, it's a mental phenomenon, isn't it? It's conscious, it's part of, it's a mental factor.
Let's ask our expert here. So he's asking, I said, what's the basis of designation of the feeling? And I said, we better ask our low-rig experts over here. So all the three of you, but Diana's our resident low-rig mind. Oh no, that was low-rig. I'm not sure about mind manufacturers yet. What is like Venerable said, what is feeling a consciousness, or is feeling something else?
Thoughts. This is a thought.
It's what? Talk?
Thought.
Thought. Feeling is a thought. Feeling is a mental factor.
It's a sensation.
It is the experience, the conscious experience. So it's not just a thought. There can be, even if you have mental feeling, which we call happiness or suffering, happiness or unhappiness, even that is not a thought. It itself, the feeling itself, well, the feeling itself can be coincident with a conceptual consciousness, a thinking consciousness, like you're thinking of something, but the actual experience itself is not necessarily conceptual. I mean, it can take on the nature of being conception if it's a feeling bearing similarities with a conceptual mind. So feeling itself is a consciousness which is an experience. Usually that's what we say. It is the experience of pleasure, pain, or neutral, that which is, we say, lungmeten, unpredicted by Buddha as being one of the... not lungmeten. Not lungmeten. Tangyong, equal, right? Pardon?
Is that based on intention? No.
Say again?
I think if I remember right, it's our experience. Feeling is an experience based on our previous actions, our karma.
It's due to the ripening of karma, yeah. It's due to contact. Remember, I think comes due to contact, mental factor, contact. Contact always precedes them. But so you have to recognize that. So what is the basis of designation for the feeling? There's a sense that there is a findable feeling which is a unity, a singularity. But feeling, like, let's say stream of consciousness. Say, for instance, Venerable, if you were to meditate on the emptiness of the mind stream, of consciousness, you would recognize that as you're watching it, there seems to be a consciousness existing from its own side, but consciousness is merely labeled to a succession of moments. So even if the pain or the pleasure is continuous, there is a succession of moments that you are labeling that. Indeed, it's not always, it didn't always exist in your mind stream. If it were truly existent, it would never change. And even though it might seem continuous for some period of time, there might be some oscillations in it and so forth. So there's one particular way to meditate on that. I think in the commentaries of the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara, there's some commentary on that. But that would be one way that one would meditate then on the emptiness of the, thank you. He's putting up 4 fingers now, so it's 4 minutes. So meditate on when form is empty. So meditate on the emptiness of the form aggregate. The form aggregate seems to be truly existent. The mind is assenting to that, but is empty of that. So meditate on the emptiness. And then the profundity of that the emptiness is the same nature as the conventional form. It's not the same nature as the truly existent form. Why not? The truly existent form doesn't exist. The emptiness of the form means the emptiness of the conventionally existent form. It means the conventionally existent form is empty of truly existent form. Usually we say the person, meaning the conventional person, is empty of being truly existent. So in longer terms, you could say the conventionally existent person is empty of being a truly existent person.
Emptiness of conventional form is empty of...
What?
Is that what you said? Emptiness of
The conventional form is empty of truly existent form. So the basis that you're taking is the conventionally existent form. Okay, that's what you're taking, and it, even though it appears to our perception now, inevitably is mixed with the appearance of true existence. You say that the form here, you can't really differentiate this. You just say form is empty of being truly existent. Almost you have to take everything away now. Okay, we're making some headway. So let's dedicate here, because we're gonna just finish right now. What?
Did you ever say what the basis of designation of feeling was? Or did
Basis of designation of feeling is a succession of moments of experience.
That wasn't just relating to consciousness.
No, I gave the example of consciousness because Venerable is probably familiar from when we meditate on the emptiness of the consciousness. Even consciousness itself is empty of true existence because it has parts, and anything which has parts is inevitably empty because it appears to be a unity, like say the aggregates comprise your parts. There seemed to be something findable there, but the person, Lisa, right, is just imputed upon that collection of parts. Can't be found in any of the parts. Okay. Oh, I think something good. Yeah. What do you think? Some little something coming? Okay. So let's try to dedicate the merits in the same way that we were talking about how to meditate on the emptiness of previous actions, non-virtuous actions, to purify them. Also meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres of the dedication. First you dedicate. Due to these merits, may I and all sentient beings quickly develop the two bodhicittas, the conventional bodhicitta, the ultimate bodhicitta, and in achieving that goal of the two bodhicittas, the ultimate goal of enlightenment, may I lead all sentient beings to enlightenment due to these merits. Now notice there may be some grasping. A real I is making the dedication of these real merits to that real goal, real findable, truly existent goal. So to seal this in a way that it becomes transcendental and no longer susceptible to being destroyed by anger and wrong view and abandoning the Dharma and so forth, meditate on the emptiness of the merit dedicated, the emptiness of the goal dedicated to, here the development of the two bodhicittas and the eventual achievement of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And even the action of dedicating is just a name designated to this succession of moments. You can't find dedication in any one of those moments.